everyone, today we're going to be making 3 chocolate cake flavors using only 1 half sheet pan of chocolate cake and 1 recipe of Swiss meringue buttercream. The first is an Oreo cake with a cookies and cream filling and frosting. The second is a chocolate lover's cake filled with dark chocolate ganache. And the final cake is a beautiful raspberry chocolate cake topped and filled with white chocolate buttercream. Now to make these mini lunchbox cakes, you will need a chocolate cake that is baked in a half sheet pan, and I have a very detailed video on how to accomplish that. I will leave a link for you in the description box below. With my 3-inch round cutter, I'm able to get 18 rounds, which I will use for 9 2-layer cakes. You can store your cake scraps in a zip top bag for some cakesicles or cake pops or trifles, and then go ahead and set your cake layers aside. So like I said earlier, we're only using 1 recipe of Swiss meringue buttercream that matches my half sheet recipe. So take that entire recipe, don't add the vanilla because we'll flavor it later, and divide it into 3 equal bowls. The first chocolate cake we'll be making is the Oreo cake. So take a little bit of frosting, apply it to the bottom of the cake so that it will adhere to the cake board or parchment paper. Then add about a tablespoon or so of frosting onto the first layer, smoothing it out. We are now going to add some broken Oreo cookies to the filling. For a 3-inch cake, I like to add about the equivalent of a little more than a whole Oreo cookie to the middle of the cake. Now I like to use just regular Swiss meringue buttercream for the filling and crumb coat, as I find that the chocolate cake and Oreos add flavor by itself. Add a couple more tablespoons of buttercream to cement the Oreos into the filling. Next, add your second round of cake. Add some more frosting to the top of your cake to start the crumb coat. The process that I like to use to crumb coat cakes is the same for mini cakes as it is for large cakes. So I start with the top first, smoothing it out and push the residual frosting off the sides. Then I use that side residual frosting to fill in the gap where the filling is and do a smoothing motion to kind of coat the sides. To fix the top, I just pull the knife towards the center of the cake and that'll give you a somewhat smooth surface. After this, I like to let these cakes set in the fridge for about 5 to 10 minutes before I do the top coat and the decorations. Now for the top coat, I do like to use an Oreo Swiss meringue buttercream. So take the remainder of your buttercream and add some Oreo crumbs. To make these crumbs, I just removed the cream centers out of some large Oreo cookies, about 8 of them, and then took the remainder of the chocolate cookies and run them through a food processor. To get a really smooth finish with Oreo buttercream, you want to make sure that your crumbs are ground really fine. Now take one of your cooled cakes and apply some of that Oreo buttercream to the top. This is going to be the same technique that we used for crumb coating. So take your knife and smooth out the top of the cake while at the same time pushing the residual frosting off to the sides. Now take the frosting that has piled onto the sides and smooth it all around the perimeter of the cake. If you want a super smooth surface, you can use what I'm using, which is the bench scraper, to go all the way around the perimeter of the cake again. I also like to use the bench scraper to go along the cake board to scrape off any chunks of frosting. Now to decorate the tops of these cakes, I just took the remainder of the Oreo buttercream and put it in a piping bag that was fitted with a round tip nozzle. It is pretty obvious that this is an Oreo cake, but you can also decorate with some mini Oreos. The second cake we'll be making is the chocolate lover's cake filled with chocolate ganache. So we'll make the buttercream first by taking our bowl of Swiss meringue buttercream and adding a couple ounces of cooled and melted dark chocolate. Okay, to start the assembly on these cakes, go ahead and add a dab of buttercream to the cake board to adhere the first layer to the surface. To fill these cakes, I'm using a whipped dark chocolate ganache, which is essentially 2 parts cream to 1 part dark chocolate. Heat the cream up and pour it over the chopped chocolate, mix it and allow it to cool. Once it's nice and cool, I use an electric beater to whip it up into a nice and airy texture. So I apply an even layer of this cool ganache to the center of these cakes and then use an offset spatula to smooth it out. Place your second layer of cake on top of the whipped ganache. Next, use your chocolate Swiss meringue buttercream to crumb coat the cake. Allow these to chill in the fridge for about 5 to 10 minutes. Once these chocolate cakes are nice and firm, go ahead and finish with the top coat of chocolate Swiss meringue buttercream, following the same procedure that we used for the Oreo cakes. To finish off with the decorating of these cakes, I put the remainder of the chocolate buttercream in a piping bag fitted with a Wilton 2D tip, piped little rosettes in the corner of the cake, and decorated with mini chocolate chips. The last cake we'll be making is my personal favorite due to its appearance and flavor, and that is the white chocolate raspberry cake. So let's start off first by flavoring our buttercream with white chocolate. Add about 2 ounces of melted and cooled white chocolate to your Swiss meringue buttercream. I like to use Whole Foods mini white chocolate chips. It's relatively inexpensive and it tastes really good. So go ahead and adhere your first layer of cake to the surface with a dab of buttercream. Then add about a tablespoon of the white chocolate Swiss meringue buttercream to the first layer of cake. Now, if this were a larger cake, I would definitely leave the raspberries intact, but since this is a smaller cake, I'm gonna go ahead and break up about 3 or 4 raspberries and put them on top of the buttercream. Then take a couple more tablespoons of your buttercream and smooth it out on top of the raspberries. Place your second layer of cake on top and then add the buttercream so that you can do your crumb coat. Again, let these cool in the fridge for about 5 to 10 minutes before proceeding. Once your cakes are nice and chilled, add the final coat of white chocolate Swiss meringue buttercream. To finish off the decorations for these cakes, I'm going to keep it really simple by just placing some raspberries on top, along with some white chocolate strawberry crisp pearls. And here are the finished bento cakes. You can go ahead and package them in the takeout containers or write little celebratory messages on top. But let's take a look at the cross sections for these cakes. We'll start off with the chocolate ganache cake first. Got that dark chocolate ganache sandwiched between the chocolate cake and covered in chocolate Swiss meringue buttercream. Next up is the white chocolate raspberry cake, and this one is just gorgeous. You can see the red raspberries inside that white chocolate Swiss meringue buttercream filling. And lastly, we have the Oreo cake, which won the taste test all around my house. Now you can see why I like to use white Swiss meringue buttercream for the filling. It actually looks like an Oreo, but when you bite into it, you can taste the big Oreo pieces that we put on the inside. Leave me a comment down below if you'd like me to try any kind of flavor combos. Happy baking, everyone!